Alright, so let's get started by going over what all comes inside of your Modda Crochet garden kit. So let's open up this box and see what we've got. Alright, so inside you will find first the crochet pattern in this nice, really well printed little booklet for you. Next, you'll also see this QR code to getting to the video course, but I'm assuming that since you're here, you've already figured this one out. Then we have our skeins of yarn that we're going to be using to create all of our cactus friends. These little tiny skeins for making the flowers, and of course green for making all of our cactuses. Then we also have all of our notions, so we've got our crochet hook, our stitch markers, our tapestry needles, and our embroidery needle all inside of here. We've got this big bag of stuffing that we're going to be using to stuff the inside of our plushes. And then here we have the safety eyes and the black embroidery floss we're going to be using to make their faces. Alright, so now that we've checked out everything that's inside, let's go ahead and get started on making one of our cactus friends. Alright, so for the tutorial today, we're going to be making the potted sitting planter you can see here in our booklet. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we're going to begin with the plant part of this the seeded potted planter today. So we're going to begin by tying ourselves a magic loop. So we're going to make a little bit of a finger guns here, and then take the tail of our green yarn and with our thumb press it against the bottom digit of our index and middle finger. Then we'll take our working yarn, wrap it around the top digit, so I flipped my hand over. Then we're going to cross it over and smush it underneath our thumb here, and then do the same thing with the lower digit, and then tighten against our thumb. Then we'll take our crochet hook and slip it underneath that top loop, grab the bottom loop, slip it underneath. Then we'll flip both of our hands over and then bring our hook hand up and alongside the hand with the wraps on it. Then we'll take our index and thumb on our hook hand and pinch the two loops on the back of our hand here with all of our yarn on it. Then gently let go with your thumb and slide both of those loops off. Once you've done that, we're going to take our working yarn, which is this one here, and we're going to tension it. So bring it up and alongside our magic loop here. Then we'll take our left thumb and middle finger and pinch that twist, this one here. Once we've done that, we can tighten our working yarn, tensioning it here with our left hand, and then yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. That's how you form your magic loop. It's locked in place now, so you don't have to worry about anything sliding or coming undone. One last thing is we're going to need to undo this twist here, so just pull your tail out. And then we are ready to get started on our first round, which is to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of that magic loop. So when we're working in our magic loop, we're going to be working both underneath the loop and the tail itself. So we'll take our hook, go underneath both of those, so through the center of the loop, yarn over, draw up a loop, and then yarn over and draw through both loops on our hook. Once we've done that, we can continue adding single crochets in the exact same manner. So just going under. We need to keep adding single crochet stitches until we have 6 total. Once we have all 6 of our single crochet stitches inside our magic loop, we can pull the tail. And then we're going to slip stitch to this first single crochet that we made for round 2. So to slip stitch, we're just going to go from front to back through both of the loops of that first stitch, yarn over and draw through, and then just keep drawing through. Then we're going to chain 18 stitches. So to chain, it's a lot like a slip stitch. You're just going to pull your working yarn through, and we need to do that 18 times. Right, so once we've done that, we're going to make a double crochet in the 4th chain from our hook. So we're going to yarn over to get ready for that, and then we're going to count. So we don't count the loop on our hook. So we'll start here with 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to go through that 4th chain, yarn over, draw through that chain, then yarn over, draw through 2 loops, yarn over and draw through 2 loops. Then we're going to put another double crochet in that same space. And just for this first one, this chain here, where we skipped and put it in the 4th chain, so that chain there, that's going to count as our first double crochet. So we have a cluster of 3 of them here in this stitch. So we're going to take our hook out, so you can pull that last stitch up kind of long if you need to. And then we're going to insert the hook from front to back through the top of that chain. So it's going to be this stitch here. So we're going to go from front to back through there, and then from back to front through the loop that we pulled off of our hook. Then we're going to just pull that stitch through the chain that we went to form our first popcorn stitch. So to move down the chain, we're going to place 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 chains. So 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to make our next popcorn stitch. So it's a 3 double crochet popcorn. So the rest of the popcorns are going to be a little different because we need to make 3 double crochet. We're not going to have that chain like we did at the end. So we're going to go ahead and yarn over, go through our next stitch, form 1 double crochet, here's my second, and then my third. Then we'll pull that loop up a little long, go through the top of our first double crochet that we made, so from front to back, and then from back to front on that loop, and just pull that loop through. And that forms our second popcorn stitch. Then we're going to continue this pattern of 3 single crochet, popcorn, 3 single crochet, popcorn, until our last 2 chain stitches. Alright, so I've made my last popcorn. I have just those last 2 chains left, so I'm going to put 1 single crochet in each. And then I'm also going to put a single crochet in that same stitch that I slip stitched to in my 6 single crochet in the magic ring. So if you look, it's the one that's like directly underneath and the chain that we made is coming out of. So I'm going to put a single crochet through that stitch as well. So I'm just going to go from front to back through, single crochet, then I'm going to single crochet in the next stitch of my magic loop. So I'll just go through that next stitch and make a single crochet. And then I'm going to keep repeating this pattern of chaining 18, popcorning down until I am all the way around my magic loop here. So we should have 6 strands of leaves by the time that we're done. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on my second strand. I will see you back here whenever I am all the way around with all 6 strands of the upper row of my leaves. Alright, so I have just finished my last strand, and you can see I've went ahead and put my single crochet in the same stitch that the strand's chain was coming out of. So I'm ready to start my second round. And the second round's going to work in between each of the strands that we've already made. So there's 2 stitches in between each of those strands. We're going to be working in the one closest to the far strand. And we're going to have to lift these strands up as we work so that our second round ends up being underneath the first round. So I'll start off by placing my first single crochet stitch. I'm going to lift my first strand out of my way, and then I'm going to place that stitch here, because this one here you can see is coming out of the strand. So I'm going to go through this stitch here. I'm just going to single crochet. So now that I've lifted that strand out of the way, you can see it'll sit on top, and the second strand is good to be underneath this top layer. And we're going to make the strands on this layer the exact same way we made them on the top layer. We're just going to chain 18. We'll make that double crochet popcorn stitch here at the top, and then alternate between single crocheting and popcorning until we get all the way back down. So once we get back down, we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. We'll single crochet in the same stitch that our chain's coming out of, lift the next strand out of the way, and then single crochet in the next stitch in between the next two strands. So I'm going to work down this chain that I've just made so I can show you what that was that I've just explained. So let me work through that really quickly. Alright, so I've just put my second single crochet in the last chain down my first strand of the second row. So just like the first row, I'm going to go ahead and single crochet in the exact same space that that chain is coming out of. So that stitch that we single crocheted in before we started chaining. And then to move on to my next strand, I'm going to have to lift up the first row strand. So I'm just lifting it straight up and out of my way. Then I can single crochet in the stitch here in between the top upper strands. So I'll just place a single crochet there. And I'm going to repeat that same process that I did with that first strand, and I'm just going to keep working around until I have 6 strands total on my lower round. So I will catch you back here when we are ready to fasten off. Alright, so I've just finished my last strand on the lower round, and I'm ready to fasten off. So I'm going to do that. I went ahead and single crocheted in that stitch between the first strand of this round and the last. And we're going to actually slip stitch in that same stitch too to fasten off. And then we need a long tail because we're going to use this to sew the plant onto the top of the soil. So I'm going to cut myself maybe 14 inches or so. And then pull that last slip stitch through. Careful not to get all your stuff tangled as you pull, like I just did. And then tighten that slip stitch down. And that is the plant ready to go. So we're going to set this aside for now while we work on the next part of our pattern. Right, next up we're going to be making the pot. So we're going to start with that coral color from our kit. And we're going to begin with a magic loop. And then for round 1, we're going to start off by placing 6 single crochet stitches inside of that magic loop. Once you've got all 6, you can go ahead and pull the tail to close our first round off. And we are ready for round 2. So for round 2, we're going to put 2 single crochet stitches in each stitch because that's how we make a single crochet increase. So we're going to go through our first stitch here, from front to back underneath both sides, yarn over, draw up a loop, yarn over, draw through both. And then it's also a good idea to start marking your stitches here. So go ahead and grab one of those stitch markers from your kit. So that's 1 single crochet. We need to add another one in that same space to finish our increase. And then we're going to continue putting 2 single crochet stitches in the remaining 5 stitches of this round. Once you've finished your last increase, we're going to take that magic loop tail and pull it tight one more time. And then we're not going to cut it off, we're just going to trim it a little shorter so that it stays out of our way while we continue working around. Alright, so for round 3, we're going to start off with 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch. That's our first stitch of the round, so we're going to go ahead and mark it as well. And then we're going to increase in the next stitch. And then if you look up here in the top left, you can see that what I've just done is inside of some asterisks. That means we're going to repeat that sequence however many times it takes for us to get all the way around our round. So I've done it once, I'm going to keep repeating it. Alright, that was my last increase, so I'm ready to move on to round 4. So for round 4, we're going to start off by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So that 2 in front of that single crochet symbol up there doesn't mean to put 2 in the same space because that's what an increase is. So we'll start off with 1 single crochet stitch. Of course, we're going to mark that as it's the first stitch of the round, then another single crochet stitch, and then an increase. And then we're going to repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, so we're ready for round 5. So for round 5, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. Then follow that with an increase. And then just like before, repeat that same sequence all the way around. Alright, we're ready for round 6. So for round 6, we're going to start off with 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches. Then we're going to increase, and then repeat that same sequence all the way around. Alright, so for round 7, we're going to be working in the back loops only of round 6. So when we work through our stitches, we usually work through both of the loops, so both front and back. For this round, we're only going to be working through that back loop. So we're going to start off by placing 1 back loop only single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches. So there's my first, and you can see it leaves the front loop behind. So I'll keep working. I need 5 of these. So there's 5. And then I'm going to do a back loop only increase, which means I'm going to put 2 single crochet stitches in the back loop only of the next stitch. And then just like all the previous rounds, we're going to repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, so we're ready for round 8. So I'm going to go ahead and take my stitch marker out. And for round 8, we're going to be working just like we normally would be in both loops of our stitches. And we're going to make 1 single crochet stitch in the next 13 stitches. So there's my 13. I'm going to increase. And then I'm going to repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, I'm ready for round 9. So for round 9, I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 14 stitches, and then follow that with an increase. So there's my 14, here's my increase. Then just like before, we're going to repeat that same sequence all the way around. Alright, so I'm in my last increase here of round 9. So I'm going to do the first single crochet here in this stitch. But then before we finish the last part of our increase, we're going to switch colors because we need to switch to that off-white color from our kit. So to do a color change, I'm going to go and make a single crochet because this is an increase here. I'm going to make the first half of it. And I'm going to stop when I have 2 loops here left on my hook, because I need to pull through both of these loops in my new color. And the nice thing about this color change is we can leave the coral colored yarn attached because we're going to be coming back for it. So go ahead and just grab the off-white color from your kit. And I like to make mine into a little loop and then hook it over my hook and then just pull the last stitch through with the new color. Then I'm also going to kind of tighten down with the old coral strand, and I can just leave it where it sits for now because we're going to come back for it later. But I'm going to work all of the stitches of round 10 and 11 with this new off-white color. I'm also going to want to work my tail in as I go, so to do that, go ahead and take my stitch marker out. This first stitch is always a little loose, so I kind of hold on to that tail at the back to kind of help keep things tensioned. So I'm going to go through my stitch, and then like when we did our magic loop, I'm going to hold that strand over my stitches and then place it over my hook, and then just make my single crochet stitch like I normally would. Of course, I'm going to want to mark that. It's my first stitch of the round for round 10. Then I'm going to keep working that tail in, just setting it over the top of my hook, kind of alongside the back of my work. And I'm going to work it in as I go until I worked it in for, 5-6 stitches, and then I can cut it short. And it'll stay hidden inside of the pot. Alright, so I will catch you back here whenever I get close to the end of round 11 for when we switch back to our coral color. Alright, so I'm wrapping up the end of round 11, and since for rounds 12 through 14 we're going to be back with that coral color, I need to finish the last stitch of round 11 with the coral that's still attached. So I'm going to go ahead and make half of my single crochet and then grab that coral strand that we left attached and pull the last loop of that single crochet with the coral. Then you can tighten down with your off-white, and you don't even need to cut it. We're going to keep it attached because we're coming back for it in a couple of rounds. Alright, so I'm going to continue working around in coral for rounds 12 through 14. That's 3 rounds total. So I will see you back here when we are ready to switch back to the off-white color. Alright, so I'm wrapping up the end of round 14 here with this coral color. And we're going to make one more off-white stripe for our pot. So again, our last stitch of this round, we're going to finish off with the off-white color. And you can leave the coral color attached because we are coming back for it. So pull that last stitch closed with that off-white color, and then we're going to continue working around for round 15 and 16 with the off-white color to make that last off-white stripe. So I'll see you back here when I am closer to the end of round 16. Alright, I am finishing up the end of round 16 with that off-white color, and we are just about done with the off-white, so here's my last stitch. We're going to finish it off with the coral color. And then we need to cut the off-white because we are done adding stripes to our pot. So I'm going to cut a very short tail. And then as we work round 17, we're going to work that off-white tail in as we go. So for round 17, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 14 stitches, working in that off-white tail as we go. So I'm going to place that first stitch working underneath both of the stitch. I'm going to place that first stitch working underneath the stitch and the tail. single crochet. I'm going to mark that. And then I'm going to keep single crocheting along. I need 14 stitches before I do my decrease. And I've worked my off-white tail in for the last 8 stitches, so I'm going to go ahead and just snip it here. Don't need to work it in the whole way. Alright, and then we're ready to do our first decrease. So to decrease, we're going to go through our next stitch, yarn over and drop a loop, and then repeat that same thing in the next stitch, yarn over, drop a loop, and then draw through all 3 loops on your hook. And that makes it so that there's 1 single crochet stitch that takes up the space of 2. So we're going to repeat that sequence of 14 single crochet decrease all the way around. Alright, I'm ready for round 18. So for round 18, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch, the next 13 stitches, and then decrease. So there's my 13 single crochet, here's my decrease, and then I'm going to repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, I'm ready for round 19. So for round 19, we're going to be working in the front loops only. So when we made the bottom of the pot, we worked in the back loops. This time around we need to work in the front loops because we want to leave this ring of stitches on the inside of the pot for when we attach our soil. So we're going to start off by placing 1 single crochet in the front loop only. So there's my first. We're going to do that for the next 5 stitches. So there's 1. And then we're going to do a front loop only decrease, which is exactly like a decrease, just working in the front loops only. So I'll go through that first stitch's front loop, drop a loop, go through that next stitch's front loop, drop a loop, and then draw through all 3. Just like before, we're going to repeat that same sequence all the way around. Alright, I'm ready for round 20. So for round 20, I'm going to be working in both loops again. So I'm going to make 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches. And then I'm going to decrease. And then repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, we're ready for round 21, which is our last round of the pot. And all we'll need to do is slip stitch in each stitch all the way around. That's going to help hold the top of the pot open so it doesn't kind of curve in on us. So we're not going to slip stitch super tight, just nice loose slip stitches in every stitch all the way around. Alright, that was my last slip stitch. So we're ready to fasten off. We'll take our stitch marker out and we can just cut our yarn, and we just need a little bit of a tail to weave in, not very long. And since we've already slip stitched, all we need to do is pull that last stitch through, and then of course tighten that last stitch. And then we're going to weave this coral tail in because we want it out of our way for when we add the soil. So go ahead and thread the eye of your tapestry needle with that coral tail. I'm going to send mine from front to back so that I can weave it in the back side of my pot. I'm just going to flip this and send this down the inside until I get to that first stripe there. And I'll go ahead and trim. And that is the pot. So let's get the soil added next. Alright, so for the soil we're going to need that brown color yarn from our kit and of course our pot. So to get the soil attached, we're going to be working on the loops left behind from round 19 of the pot. So the easiest way to access that is to take the pot and sort of fold the outside down, and then where those loops are, we're going to kind of roll the pot so that we can easily access all of those loops. So I put them so they're at the very top of that fold that I've made. Then before we even attach, let's double check that we're looking at the pot the correct direction. So we're going to fasten on so that we can see the outside of the pot. I'm going to be fastening on here. We don't want to fasten on this way where you can sort of like look inside the pot. We don't want that. We don't want to attach here. We're going to make sure we're attaching here and the front side of the pot is really close to us. So go ahead and take your hook and we're going to slip it underneath one of the loops left behind when we front looped only single crocheted on the pot. Then we're going to grab some of our brown yarn and we're going to fold a loop. This is sort of like when we do a color change. We'll fold a little loop and then pull that through. And then actually we're going to take the tail, so this shorter one here, and we're going to pull the tail through that loop that we just pulled through. And that ties a knot so that our brown is attached. And we're also going to take that tail and we're going to fold it behind because we want to weave that in as we go. Now the last thing we'll need to do to get started is to go back through that same space that we tied our knot on, and then we're going to pull the working yarn through. And that draws up a loop so that we are ready to start on round 1 of the soil. So for round 1, we're going to single crochet in the next 5 stitches, so the next 5 of those loops left behind. So here's my first. I'm going to mark that as well because it's my first single crochet of the round. And then take that tail with you as you go to. It's just like we did when we did our color change from the last stripe to coral. So there's my first 5 single crochet stitches, and then I'm going to single crochet decrease in the next 2 loops left behind. And I'm going to cut that tail. I've woven it in for 5-6 stitches. And then we're going to repeat that same sequence all the way around. And I'm ready to start on round 2, so I'll take my marker out. Round 2, we're going to single crochet in the next 4 stitches. Of course, mark your first stitch. And then we're going to decrease. And then repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, ready for round 3. So for round 3, we're going to single crochet in the next 3 stitches. Then we're going to decrease in the next 2 stitches, and then repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, we're ready for round 4. So we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. Then we're going to decrease and repeat that same sequence all the way around. Alright, and for round 5, we'll place 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch, and then decrease, and then repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, and before we do our last decrease round, we need to add the face and stuff the pot. So we're going to go ahead and draw this last loop up really long. And while we're working, we need to be really careful not to accidentally grab any of this. So just keep that in mind as you're working on the face. All right, we're also gonna flip the lip of the pot back and then kind of smooth some things out. So I'm just kind of running my finger along the inside here. First, let's get ourselves oriented so we're looking at the pot the same way. So the back of your pot is gonna have these jogs here. So the places where the rows meet kind of jogs a little bit. This is the back of the pot. We don't want to put our face on this side. So we're going to flip the pot around. And then we're going to go ahead and add the eyes first. So grab the eyes that came with your kit and the little plastic backs that come with them too. And then we're going to take one of the eyes and we're going to use the stem to count where we're going to place the eyes. So they're going to be in rounds 13 and 14, so the space between. So it's that coral stripe kind of in between those off-white stripes that we made. So that's kind of a rough idea where we're going to go. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So it's in between these rounds here. So I'm going to place one of my eyes there. Just poke it through the fabric. And then I'm going to place my other eye about 6 stitches apart from that first. So we're going to count the holes between 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just going to pop that eye straight through. Now, of course, feel free to sort of experiment if you want your eyes to be a little further apart, a little closer together, higher or lower. My only advice is to make sure your eyes don't go above this round of the soil because the backs of the eyes need to be inside where everything's stuffed. Once you've got the eyes placed where you like, we're going to take those little plastic parts and push them onto the back of the stem of the safety eye. All right, and my eyes are placed. Next up, we need to stuff our pot. So go ahead and grab some fluff and let's start stuffing. This is where we want to be careful not to accidentally grab any of our working yarn. So be really careful not to suddenly stuff that inside of the pot too. All right, so that is the pot stuffed for me. I'm also going to kind of stretch this lip out a little bit. There we go. Then we need to embroider on the smile and the eyelashes. So we're going to go ahead and grab some of the black embroidery floss that came with our kit. You want about 1/4 of it because there are 3 other projects in this kit. So try not to take too much or you won't have enough for your other cactus. Then we'll go ahead and take that embroidery floss and we're going to thread it through the eye of the embroidery needle that came with our kit. Then we're going to tie a knot at the end, and I like to do that by grabbing the end of my embroidery floss here with my needle hand and then wrapping counterclockwise around the needle. And I usually wrap several times. Then, holding that tight, I'm going to slide all of those wraps down over the eye and then just keep sliding until they're at the very end of my embroidery floss. All right, so let's start off by embroidering the smiles. The smile's going to be slightly lower and then in between the 2 eyes. So let's take our embroidery needle and send it down in through the fluff. And I'm going to bring it up just to the inside of the left eye. And let's sew the corners first. So I'm going to make a sort of diagonal stitch over this row here. So I'll send that through. And then we're going to copy that here on the other side. So I'm going to sew up next to this eye. There's the corner of the mouth. I'll do the same thing over here. And then we need to make the bottom of the mouth next. So I'm going to come back up through where the corner of the left side went in. And then we're going to sew just one long straight stitch between the two corners of the mouth. And then we need to make the eyelashes next. So we're going to send our embroidery floss up and then over the top of the left eye. So about halfway through where the eye meets. That's where we'll send our embroidery needle. Try to get as close to the eye as you can. So there's the smile. And then we're going to run some eyelashes here. We're going to make the ones that go down first. So we'll sew a diagonal stitch this way, and then come back up through and we'll sew a straight stitch. And we'll repeat here on the other eye. So another diagonal stitch here. And then a straight stitch. And then I'm going to send that embroidery needle up through my fluff, because that's the last stitch that I need to sew for the eyelashes. And then we can tie a surface knot by looping our embroidery floss over the fluff inside of the pot, sewing down and then back up through that loop and through the fluff. That'll tie out a knot. And then we can weave that in by sending it down to the fluff and then out through just any spot on our cactus pot's body. Give that a snip. And that is the face and eyelashes added to the pot. Then we can go ahead and finish off the soil. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out, take my crochet hook and put it through that last stitch and then pull tight to tighten down. And then we just need to put decreases in all of the remaining stitches. So to do that, go from front to back through, decrease. I'm going to go ahead and mark that stitch as well. And I'll keep decreasing around. Alright, now that I'm all the way around my decreases, I can fasten off. I'll do that by slip stitching through that stitch my stitch marker was just in. And then we need to cut a tail that we can use to close up that last round and weave in. Doesn't need to be too terribly long. Once you've got that cut, pull your last slip stitch through. If any of the fluff came through with your last slip stitch, you can kind of grab that. I sometimes have to cut any extra fluff that comes through that way. Alright, now we can close up that last round by threading that tail we just cut through our tapestry needle. And then we're going to sew through each of the 6 remaining stitches of this round. So we're just going to grab the stitch, whip stitch in each one. Once we've sewn in all 6, we're going to pull them tight to close. And then we're going to tie a surface knot by looping our tail over the surface of our work, sewing down and then up through the center of that loop. And then holding the loop close to the body of the work, pull our tail, which ties a surface knot. Then we're going to weave our tail in by sewing straight down and into the pot. Once we've done that, we can cut that tail. And that is the pot complete. So next up, let's get the arms and the legs made, and then we'll attach everything together. Alright, so we're going to make the arms next, so we need to use that coral colored yarn and begin with a magic loop, just like all of the things in the round so far. Then we're going to start by placing 6 single crochet stitches in that magic loop. So that's round 1. Then for round 2, we're going to place 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. and then follow that with an increase, and then repeat that sequence another 2 times. Then for rounds 3 and 4, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so before we start round 5, I'm going to take that magic loop tail and kind of stuff it inside of the hand here. Alright, so now it's out of my way. For round 5, we're going to place 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch. And then decrease. And then repeat that another 2 times. Alright, and then for rounds 6 through 17, all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So I will see you back here whenever I am getting close to finishing up that last round, and I'll show you how we fasten off. Alright, so I just finished my last single crochet of round 17. So to fasten off the arm, we're going to go through the first stitch of round 17 and slip stitch. Then cut ourselves a medium tail, because we're going to use this to attach the arm to the body, and pull through and tighten. And then we need 2 arms total, so I have both of mine already made. So go ahead and make your second arm, and then we're going to move on and make the legs next. Alright, so we need that coral color one more time for our legs, and we're going to start just like we have with the arms and the pot, with a magic loop. Then we're going to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of that magic loop for our first round. Pull the tail to close that magic loop off. Then for round 2, we're going to start with 1 single crochet in the first stitch of the round. Go ahead and mark that stitch since it's the first one. And then an increase in the next stitch. And then repeat that sequence all the way around. Alright, and then to form the foot of the leg, we're going to crochet in the next 4 rounds, so rounds 3 through 6, just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so before I move on to round 7, I'm going to go ahead and take that magic loop tail and stuff it inside of the foot here so it's out of my way. Alright, so for round 7, we'll start with 1 single crochet stitch. Then we're going to follow that with a decrease. And repeat that sequence all the way around. And then for rounds 8 through 22, all we'll need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So I'll see you back here when I get close to the end of round 22 and show you how to fasten off. Alright, so I just finished the last stitch of round 22 here on the leg. So I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. And then just like with the arm, we need just a little bit of length of a tail to sew onto the body. Once you've got that cut, go ahead and pull through. And you will need 2 legs. So I already have both of my legs complete. So I'm ready to move on to assembly. Alright, so for assembly, let's go ahead and get started by attaching the plant to the pot itself. So go ahead and grab that green that we made, and then we'll take our tail and thread the eye through our tapestry needle. And then we're going to attach it to the soil here by whip stitching around that second layer that we've sewn. So we'll grab a little of the soil, flip the leg out of the way, like the little strand that we've crocheted, grab a little more of the soil. And we're just going to keep working around, moving those legs, the strands, out of our way as we whip stitch the plant onto the pot. We don't want to sew the strands down, we want them to stay posable. So we'll just keep moving them as we whip stitch around. Alright, so once you're all the way around, we're going to make sure that we have our green yarn coming out of the soil. So make sure it's coming from the soil and not from the plant itself. Then we're going to tie a surface knot just like we had with the embroidery floss by looping that over, sewing down through the soil and up through that loop. Then we're going to pull to tie a knot, and then weave this green tail inside of the pot and out through just any really random spot, it doesn't matter where. Then we can go ahead and give that green tail a snip. And that's the plant attached to the pot itself, and you can style it and kind of move it around if you need to. For now, I'm going to kind of pull it out of my way because next I want to attach the legs. So the legs are going to get sewn on flat. So I like to start with the tail kind of on the right side, and we're going to be sewing through both layers of the leg as we attach it to those loops left behind at the bottom of the pot. And if you look, I like my legs to be in line with my eyes. So they're going to be on the front of the body this way. You can offset them or make them closer if you want, up to you. Once you've decided where you'd like them to go though, go ahead and thread the tapestry needle with one of the legs' tails. And then I'm going to hold mine so that I can access both these loops and both layers of the fabric of the leg. So I'll grab some of that. I'm going to get a little of the row underneath it too, but that front loop only that's left behind. I'm just going to sew through all of those layers. And then I'm going to whip stitch around and do the same thing again, sewing through all of the layers here. Here's my third stitch. And I'm going to sew one more here on the very corner. And then I want to make sure my tail's coming out of the pot, so I'm going to sew back this direction so I can tie a surface knot. And then weave that tail in. And as you can see, that attaches the leg to the bottom of the pot. I'm going to repeat on the other side with the other leg. Alright, I've got both legs attached, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the tails left over from both. So pull them tight, snip. Now last up, we just need to get the arms attached. So we're going to do the same thing with the arms. We'll take it so that the tail sort of at the edge, and then we're going to be sewing them open. So we don't want to go through both layers. We want to kind of keep the arm open. And it's on the side of the pot and in that same stripe, that coral one between the two off-white, that we're going to be attaching the arm. So I'm just going to set my arm here on the side of the pot, and then I'm going to whip stitch through each of the 6 stitches of the last row of the pot. So I'll grab some of the fabric of the pot and then up through one of the stitches, and I'm just going to keep working my way around. Should only take 6 stitches to attach since we only have 6 stitches in that last row. Alright, so once you've got that arm attached, we're going to do another surface knot. And then weave that tail in. And then of course repeat that with the other arm on the other side. Alright, once you've got both arms attached, you can go ahead and cut the tails left over. And with those snipped off, that is this cactus planter complete.